Good evening, everyone. This is my Criminal Justice 598 Capstone project. Lives can be destroyed in an instant. A single decision or statement can end someone's hopes, dreams, and future before they even really begin. In the case I will be talking about tonight, the lives of 3 young men were irrevocably damaged and nearly destroyed by the actions of a single person, which quickly became the actions of an entire system. This is the story of the Duke University men's lacrosse team and the rape scandal that rocketed the university, the Durham, North Carolina community, and the country as a whole from 2006 through 2007. Our story begins at a house pictured here, owned by Duke University, located at 610 North Buchanan Boulevard in Durham, North Carolina, roughly a mile and a half from the main campus. On the night of March 13, 2006, this resident was the site of a party held for the men's lacrosse team. Unbeknownst to many of the party's attendees, an escort service had been contacted and 2 strippers hired to provide adult entertainment for the event. Most of the party attendees did not learn of the strippers until they were asked to contribute to covering their fee. The 2 women hired as strippers for the party were Crystal Mangum, pictured on the left, and Kim Roberts, pictured on the right. Soon after the women arrived at the party, things began to go badly. A verbal confrontation occurred between Kim Roberts and a lacrosse player, which led to Roberts and Mangum locking themselves inside of the bathroom. The women eventually left the bathroom and went outside into the front yard, where Mangum began yelling various obscenities at the partygoers. Both women were coaxed back inside the residence with an apology. However, further verbal confrontation occurred between the women and party attendees, which resulted in the women locking themselves inside a bathroom again. At this point, several partygoers expressed their displeasure at the women's actions and the short performances, since each had been paid several $100s to perform at the party. Eventually, the majority of partygoers departed the residence at the insistence of the team members who lived there, believing that the loud party would attract the attention of law enforcement. Mangum and Roberts also left the bathroom and went outside, at which point the door to the residence was locked by a team captain who lived there. Mangum and Roberts got into Roberts' vehicle shortly before 1 a.m. on March 14th. However, they did not leave the residence before engaging in further verbal arguments with the remaining party attendees who were still in front of the residence. Both Roberts and party attendees are alleged to have used derogatory and racist remarks during this verbal confrontation. 911 was eventually called, but by the time law enforcement responded, everyone had left the residence, including the residents of the house. As Mangum and Roberts drove away from the residence, they became engaged in an argument amongst themselves, with Roberts even attempting to push Mangum out of the vehicle at one point. The women eventually ended up at a Kroger grocery store, where the Durham Police Department eventually responded after being called to the scene by a security guard working out of the Kroger. Mangum was removed from the vehicle and questioned by officers, at which time she was found to have no identification, refused to speak with the officers, displayed difficulty walking and moving around, and was believed to be severely impaired. Crystal Mangum was taken by Durham police officers to the Durham Center Access, a mental health and substance abuse facility, for involuntary commitment due to her actions. During the admission process at Durham Center Access, Mangum claimed to have been raped prior to her arrival and was then transferred over to the Duke University Medical Center for treatment. At Duke University Medical Center's emergency department, Mangum received a thorough examination and a rape kit was also performed. An examination of Mangum's skin, arms, and legs showed no swelling, no abnormalities, and only 3 small cuts to her right knee and right heel. When asked about receiving any physical blows or strikes delivered by hand during her rape, Mangum specifically and repeatedly denied having been struck. Further examination also showed no tenderness or marks to her back, chest, or neck. The report does note that there was diffuse swelling of Mangum's vagina, which she attributed to having engaged in sexual activity prior to the lacrosse party. Nothing else is noted inside the report. Within hours of the party ending, Duke lacrosse player Ryan McFadden sent out an email to other members of the team in which he made statements about having strippers over, killing them, cutting off their skin, and engaging in sexual acts with bodies, all while wearing his Duke lacrosse uniform. A screenshot of the email can be seen pictured here. Many of McFadden's fellow lacrosse players felt as though the email was intended as humorous irony, and university administrators asserted that the email was meant as an imitation of Patrick Bateman in American Psycho, which was a novel that was currently being lectured on in classes that many of the players were attending. When the Durham police learned of the email and gained access to McFadden's account, they released the email but refused to release any of the replies that had been sent to McFadden's email. This gave the impression that McFadden's email was sent in complete seriousness rather than as a joke, as it had been perceived by those who had originally received it. Upon the email's public release by the police, McFadden received over 1,000 death threats in less than a week. On March 14, 2006, the Durham Police Department officially began their investigation into Crystal Mangum's rape allegations. Mangum was interviewed by investigators, and a search warrant was performed on the 610 North Buchanan Boulevard address where the party had occurred. The 3 lacrosse players who lived at the residence all provided voluntary statements, DNA samples, and also offered to take polygraph tests. The next day, March 15th, the investigation was made public knowledge when Durham Police Sergeant Mark Gottlieb posted on the Durham Area Crime Stoppers Community Board and announced that the agency was investigating a rape that occurred on Buchanan Boulevard on the night of March 13th. On March 16th and 21st, Crystal Mangum was shown photo lineups by Sergeant Gottlieb and investigator Benjamin Hyman in an attempt to identify her attackers. The photo lineups that Mangum was shown only contained pictures of lacrosse team members, which violated the department's own policy on photographic identification, as the lineups did not include any pictures of non-suspects, which are known as filler pictures. Mangum was unable to identify her attackers on either date. On March 27, 2006, Durham County District Attorney Mike Nefong, pictured on the left, was given his first briefing on this case by Sergeant Gottlieb, pictured on the right, and investigator Hyman. Immediately after this briefing, Nefong began giving statements to the media about the case. By his own admission, Nefong gave estimated that he gave 50 to 70 interviews during the week of March 27 through April 2, 2006. During these interviews, Nefong made statements concerning the lacrosse team's alleged refusal to provide information to investigators, their invocation of their constitutional rights, in Nefong's own opinion that a racially motivated crime had occurred and that one or more lacrosse players were guilty. Nefong made these statements with the knowledge that the victim had been unable to identify any of her attackers. There was no clear physical evidence that a sexual assault had occurred, and that the lacrosse players who lived at the residence already had provided voluntary statements and DNA samples to law enforcement. On April 4, 2006, Crystal Mangum was again shown a photo lineup in an attempt to identify her attackers. This time, the lineup consisted of the 46 white players on the lacrosse team, including those who had not attended the party, and again contained no filler pictures. This lineup was also shown to Mangum as a PowerPoint presentation rather than having all the pictures arrayed together. This was also a violation of Durham police policy regarding photographic identification, and also goes against the standard operating procedures of law enforcement agencies who utilize photo lineups. From this PowerPoint presentation, Mangum identified Reed Seligman, pictured on the left, David Evans, pictured in the middle, and Colin Finnerty, pictured on the right, as her attackers, despite not having been able to do so twice in March 2006, when she was shown Seligman's, Evans, and Finnerty's photos multiple times during her previous lineup attempts. By this point in the investigation, popular opinion in the community had already turned against the lacrosse team, led by District Attorney Mike Nefong's prejudicial statements to the press. The Durham Crime Stoppers had also begun producing and publishing posters like the one seen here, with the full support of the Durham County District Attorney's Office. While all this was happening, Nefong also managed to secure a court order forcing all 46 white members of the lacrosse team to provide DNA samples, which were then submitted to the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation's crime lab to be compared to the DNA that had been found in the rape kit. On April 10, 2006, the SBI crime lab provided a report to Nefong in which they advised his office that none of the DNA samples provided by the lacrosse team matched the DNA found in the rape kit. Not deterred by the lack of physical evidence, Nefong proceeded with charges of first-degree rape, first-degree sexual offense, and kidnapping against Finnerty and Seligman, who were subsequently arrested on April 18, 2006. Evans was charged and arrested on May 15th. All three men made public statements declaring their innocence. Above you can see the notes taken by Sergeant Gottlieb and Investigator Hyman when they interviewed Kristen Mangum on March 16, 2006, including the suspect descriptions that she provided to both officers, which clearly do not match each other's notes, nor do they match any of the lacrosse players. Not satisfied with the report provided by the NCSBI Crime Lab, Mike Nefong hired DNA Security Inc., known as DSI, a private company based in Burlington, North Carolina, to conduct a second round of testing on the DNA samples and the rape kit. DSI produced a second report on May 12, 2006, which Director Brian Meehan later admitted was incomplete, and which stated that DNA from multiple males had been found. Let's turn our attention back to Kim Roberts for a minute, the other woman who had been hired as a stripper at the now infamous party. On June 8, 2006, court documents from the case were released, in which Roberts' initial and follow-on statements to law enforcement about the events of March 13th and 14th were revealed. In Roberts' statements, she reiterated multiple times that she was with Mangum during the entirety of their duration at the party, and additionally, after being told of Mangum's claim of being sexually assaulted at the party, Roberts told investigators that Mangum's claims were, quote, a crock. The case went quiet for about 6 months until December 15, 2006, when a bombshell dropped. On that day, Brian Meehan, director of DNA Security Inc., testified in court that, pursuant to an agreement between himself and Mike Nefong, he had purposely withheld information from the report that DSI had published on May 12th. The information that DSI excluded from the report was that although the DNA of multiple males was found in Kristen Mangum's rape kit, none of that DNA matched any of the samples provided by the 46 members of the Duke lacrosse team. And this was only the beginning of the revelations. A week later, on December 22nd, 2006, Mike Nifong officially dropped the first-degree rape charges against Reed Seligman, Colin Finnerty, and David Evans. However, the sexual offense and kidnapping charges were still being pursued. Nifong dropped the rape charges against the players after having been informed by the Durham police that Crystal Mangum had changed her story of what happened at the party for a sixth time, and was now saying she had been penetrated from behind and did not know who or what had penetrated her. In North Carolina, forcible penetration with an object is considered a sexual offense crime rather than rape. The next bombshell came on December 28, 2006, when the North Carolina Bar Association officially filed a 17-page ethics violation charge against Mike Nifong. Nifong was charged with making public statements prejudicial to the administration of justice and which heightened public condemnation of the accused, as well as engaging in conduct involving dishonesty, fraud, deceit, and misrepresentation. The North Carolina Bar also lists 4 rules of professional conduct that Nifong violated through his actions, and 100 prejudicial statements he made to the media during the course of the case. On January 24, 2007, Nifong will be hit with a second round of ethics violations, this time focused on his abuse of prosecutorial discretion during the case. On January 12, 2007, Mike Nifong sent a letter to North Carolina Attorney General Roy Cooper asking for the Attorney General's office to take over the case, which officially happened on January 13, 2007. Three months later, on April 11, 2007, Roy Cooper, pitched on the left, officially announced that the remaining charges of first-degree sexual offense and kidnapping had been dismissed against David Evans, Colin Finnerty, and Reed Seligman. The next day, April 12th, Cooper took a further and unusual step of officially declaring that Evans, Finnerty, and Seligman were in fact innocent of all the crimes they had been accused of in this case, and described Mike Nifong as a rogue prosecutor. Roy Cooper also announced there would be no charges filed against Crystal Mangum for filing a false police report. Cooper told the media that the investigators and attorneys from his office, who had interviewed Mangum multiple times by that point, believed that quote, she may actually believe the many different stories that she has been telling. It's in the best interest of justice not to bring charges. The investigators and attorneys held this belief about Mangum due to a previous history of mental health issues, including having been diagnosed as bipolar in 2002. So how did all of this happen? How did 3 young men get charged with crimes they did not commit? And how did justice get so unjustly applied in this case? The easiest place to lay blame would be with Crystal Mangum, as she is the one who made the false rape accusations against David Evans, Reed Seligman, and Colin Finnerty. However, the true root cause of the injustice in this case, the injustice administered in this case, can be attributed to Mike Nifong and Sergeant Mark Gottlieb. Let's start with Mike Nifong. Mike Nifong joined the Durham County District Attorney's Office in 1979, and eventually worked his way up to being the Chief Assistant District Attorney. Nifong had been appointed as the District Attorney of Durham County on April 27, 2005, when the previous DA was selected to fill a Superior Court vacancy. At the time of the Duke lacrosse case, Nifong was in the middle of a tightly contested race for the Democratic primary in Durham County. Nifong believed that he needed to drum up further support from Durham's African American community in order to secure a victory in the election, and believed that the Duke lacrosse case provided an excellent opportunity for him to do just that. Nifong would eventually secure the Democratic primary for the DA spot and would win the election in November 2006 by 883 votes. Nifong would also admit during an October 27, 2006 court hearing that neither himself nor any of the attorneys or investigators who worked for the Durham County DA's office had spoken with Crystal Mangum yet, 7 months after the allegations had been made. Once the information about his gross prosecutorial misconduct came to light, and he was charged with numerous ethics violations by the North Carolina Bar Association, he was eventually disbarred on June 16, 2007, and also became the first district attorney in the history of North Carolina to be removed from office. Nifong would later be sued by the families of Evans, Finnerty, and Seligman, and would be forced to declare bankruptcy. Sergeant Mark Gottlieb served as the primary investigator on the Duke lacrosse case for the Durham Police Department. Prior to his involvement in this case, Gottlieb had gained a reputation for perceived unfair targeting of Duke University students. Gottlieb's records showed that he made a disproportionate number of arrests of Duke students for misdemeanor violations such as carrying an open container of alcohol. From May 2005 to February 2006, Gottlieb was found to have made 28 total arrests, of which 20 were Duke students. In comparison, the other two officers who worked in the same area as Gottlieb made a combined 64 arrests in the same period, of which 2 were Duke students. Gottlieb's actions during multiple early morning raids on college parties were criticized, as there were claims made that he threatened international students with deportation, searched purses and backpacks without a warrant, and refused to inform one student of what she was being arrested for. There were also accusations against Gottlieb for committing perjury. While Gottlieb's bias against Duke students was never fully proven, his actions before and during the case certainly make a strong case for it. Gottlieb was the officer who violated the Durham Police Department's policies when he created multiple photo lineups for Crystal Mangum to view that only contained lacrosse players. He also presented a case to Mike Nifong that seemed to be on more solid ground than it actually was, thereby confirming Nifong's pre-existing biases about the case. Gottlieb and fellow investigator Benjamin Hyman also failed to question Mangum's changing stories about what happened on the night of March 13th. In the aftermath of the Duke lacrosse case, Gottlieb leave the Durham Police Department, but was also named in the same lawsuit as Nifong. He was eventually excluded from that lawsuit in 2012. Mark Gottlieb was found dead in an apparent suicide in July 2014 while living in Georgia. And what about Crystal Mangum? What caused her to make this false allegation that allowed Nifong and Gottlieb to unjustly bring the full weight of the criminal justice system down on David Evans, Colin Finnerty, and Reed Seligman? In the end, we will probably never know exactly why. What we do know is that Mangum lied repeatedly and told at least 5 different versions of what had happened on the night of March 13, 2006. We know that Mangum had worked as both a stripper and an escort since at least 2002, when she had been arrested for robbing a client at a strip club she was working at, stealing his car, and engaging in a high-speed pursuit through Durham with law enforcement. It was after this event that she had been diagnosed with bipolar. By Mangum's own admission on the night of March 13th, she had taken Flexeril, which is a muscle relaxer, and had consumed 2 large beers prior to arriving at the party. Mangum's blood work from the rape kit would also show that she had Ambien, methadone, Paxil, and amitriptyline in her system on March 13th. During Mangum's initial interview with law enforcement on March 14th, she initially claimed to have been raped by 20 men, which she then changed to 5 men, then 4 men, then 3 men, then 2 lacrosse players, before finally settling back on 3 lacrosse players as her attackers. By December 2006, she had changed her story again when interviewed by law enforcement, and was now stating she had been penetrated from behind, but was unsure if it had been by a person or by instrumentation. There's also the fact that Mangum changed the timeline of when the rape occurred, initially telling law enforcement that it happened moments before she and Kim Roberts left the party, then saying it occurred around 10 p.m., and then finally settling on 11:30 p.m., which is after Finnerty and Seligman had left the party and had alibis for being elsewhere. And let's not forget that Kim Roberts flatly denied the possibility that Crystal had been raped in her own statements to law enforcement. In a way, I feel as though Crystal might actually be the most victimized person in this case. She's very obviously someone who was in need of mental health services and treatment, but never received the help she actually needed. In the aftermath of this case, Mangum would be arrested twice. The first time in February 2010 for attempted murder, arson, resisting arrest, and child abuse. These charges would eventually be pled down to injury to personal property, resisting arrest, and contributing to the delinquency of a minor. In April 2011, she was arrested initially on assault with a deadly weapon charges after she stabbed her then-boyfriend multiple times during an argument. This charge was upgraded to murder when he later died, and Crystal was found guilty of second-degree murder on November 22, 2013. Mangum is currently incarcerated at the North Carolina Correctional Institute for Women, with a projected release date of February 27, 2026. In the end, this is a story about injustice within the criminal justice system. And when that injustice comes to light, nobody wins. David Evans, Reed Seligman, and Colin Finnerty were all found to be innocent and transferred to different universities in the aftermath of the case, but not before their reputations and futures had been shattered by being found guilty in the only court in which they were ever actually tried, the court of public opinion. Mike Nefon and Mark Gottlieb did not escape the consequences of the injustice they inflicted, as both had their own careers destroyed and lives completely ruined due to their own actions. And let's not forget Crystal Mangum, perhaps the person most affected by the injustice administered in this case. Her life has been indelibly marked by this case, not just because she is currently in prison, but because she will always be known as the Duke Liar. In cases of injustice, nobody wins, and everybody loses.